Then when I started researching about, the schools which are catering to an audience or a target market which is slightly older, there were two options. One was IMD and the other was MIT Sloan. Do you really need to do an MBA to learn corporate finance? I don't think so. You can probably do a Coursera course, which is in all probability free. He flashed a slide in one of our classes saying which MBA school has the best return on investment, right? And he did the 5 year thing, and everybody would be saying Harvard is this. And lo and behold, he proved that IMD is the best, right? When you're doing an MBA, you're essentially analyzing three things from three basic circles, right? So one is you want to change your location, or you want to change your career, right? So I think it was you want to change your function, you want to change your location, or you want to change your industry. Whatever you do on the assessment day essentially is what you've been doing for the rest for your life. And if you haven't been doing much in your life, then no hack is going to help you. This is my view. One thing which I think a lot of people do not consider and they should consider is working for smaller local companies.
Hello, guys. Welcome again with another podcast. And this time around, I have my special friend Bilal Khan who's joining us for this session. So, Bilal, I know him from our days in college. We studied together our bachelor's and in master's in Islamabad. And then we moved our own paths. Bilal did some commercial roles in Telenor, and then he decided to move to Europe, where he did his master's from IMT, and then he joined a startup and almost settled in Europe. And now currently he's living there. He's settled there. So the reason I'm connecting with him and I'm bringing him on this podcast is because we want to learn from his journey as to how did he decide to move to Europe, decide to do another MBA, decide to go for a university like IMD, given there are other universities as well, there are other countries as well. So why Swiss, why IMD? So we would like to hear from him all about that. And then what has the process been with regards to him settling in Europe? But before I continue to talk more, I'll just pause here and I'll let Bilal kind of share and talk about his journey since we last were in college together and what happened after that. And I will move into the specific questions I have with regards to the MBA process, the cost, and the settling in Switzerland. So, Bilal, over to you, and thanks for coming in.
Sure, Barrows. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. First of all, I must say you're doing a fantastic job, and I follow this channel. I've been following it for a while, and it's great to be part of your journey actually on the podcast. So yes, you're right that yes, after we were in college or uni together in Pakistan, and then we kind of went our separate ways. Actually, I started with banking, but that was a very short stint, so I don't really tell people much about that because it was just about 9 months. And, straight out of uni into banking in Karachi, I don't think I could take it, So I was like, "Nah, this is too boring, this is too strict, I don't want to do it." And then this was in 2005, and that's when these new telecoms were already entering into the market, the likes of Warid and Telenor. And I was fortunate enough then to join Telenor in June 2005. I stayed with them for about 12 years. Like you said, I was primarily in commercial roles. By the time I was leaving the organization, I was heading one of the business units, which we KPK basically, because originally I'm from Swat, Pathan. So that's probably one of the reasons why they also placed me there. So yes, I did that for about 1.5 year, and by this time I was already quite senior in the organization. I would say about so I was a director there, and then I was like, all right, how do I make the next move? Or crack into the C level or the C suite. And I thought that, what I've done so far on my exposure currently cannot really get me there. And that's where the idea of the MBA came. So I moved here to Switzerland. And there's a boutique business school over here called IMD, like you said. It's known as International Institute of Management Development here in Lausanne. Lausanne is also famous for being the head office of Olympics Committee, right? So, I mean, a lot of people know it because of that. Yeah, so I did that, and then I didn't really want to go back into to join a big organization because I'd done that for a while. So I opted for a startup. It's called Dynamics. We specialize in geospatial analytics using telecom data. So that's the connection with telecom. And my job primarily was business development, and then finally heading the operational strategy of the organization. Yeah, so it's been 8 years now that I'm in Switzerland. I did my MBA in 2017, and ever since then, I've been working in this market.
Okay, so Bilal, before going further into the IMD and the Europe settling in, it seems that you considered doing another MBA, and especially an international MBA, important for you to break into the top management. How important do you think that is, or you thought when you were doing it? Like, what was your assessment criteria? Have you seen any examples where you go like, I've seen people only being able to cross that boundary once they have an international degree? Any thoughts on that?
So I think yes, because let me just say, I mean, whatever I was thinking about breaking into the sea level while I was working in Pakistan might not necessarily be my views right now, right? But so of course views evolve, right? And that's essentially what happened to me as well. So yes, I mean, once you're working in Pakistan, normally you see. I know this is not a general rule, and I don't mean to generalize it by any stretch of any imagination. But the idea is okay. Once you kind of see the people on top, you kind of see a thread, a profile. Yes, the guy has international experience, has an international degree. So you kind of begin to think, yaar, we probably this is what I'm missing, right? So I think, and it might be true in a lot of cases as well. Although now I'm a firm believer that maybe that's not the only way. There are other ways as well. We've seen many successful professionals who just probably did their bachelor's from Punjab University or anywhere else, and they're doing pretty well. So my views are of that time should not be considered that I think the same. But since you asked at that point in time, because I'm talking about 2016 when we were taking this decision, me and my wife. Uh, so what had happened was that I was already 35 at that point, right? So I was, so to speak, the classic MBA age of 26, 27. That's where you will get into schools like Harvard or INSEAD, which are quite famous. They were already gone, right? So okay, so it was more about yes, having some exposure, but then again, it was about okay, which school is right for me. And then when I started researching about these schools which are catering to an audience or a target market which is slightly older, there were two options. One was IMD and the other was MIT Sloan, right? Both are excellent options. And fortunately, then in Telenor, I had been working with some people. I think he was then this, okay, no, not at that point, but yes, before I had worked with him, Amir Ibrahim, who is now the CEO of Jazz in Pakistan. He's an IMD graduate from the year 2000, right? And I'd worked with him directly in Telenor as well, although by then he had moved out of Telenor. He was already in Jazz. But I kind of went to him. I spoke with him as well. And then he also encouraged me a lot to do this and, go there. And, he was very clear. He was like, listen, uh, the best investment that you can do in your life is invest in yourself. And that's kind of what I took it as, that yes, I've worked for 12 years, made Telenor a lot of money, made a lot of money for a lot of so many other people. But I think now is the time that I should invest in myself, right? And so IMD I chose because yes, I had seen the IMD people in the workforce, although not too many, but I had seen them around me. Plus, while this was happening, my wife also found a job here in Geneva. So it was then kind of, everything was converging that, okay, yes, probably that's the school or destination that I should be in. And that's how I applied to IMD. So primarily, I was looking at the age because I didn't want to go to a school where I was studying with 26, 27-year-olds. I would be teaching them things. I would not be learning anything from that environment, right? So that was my primary thinking there. So yeah, that's how I chose the school.
Cool. So you did answer one of the questions I wanted to ask, which is why IMD. But now I have a slightly different question, which
Hmm.
is How much after studying from IMD is it about the brand? Because it's a big brand. And how much
Hmm.
was it about really gaining something that you didn't know? And I'm just
Hmm.
trying to gauge from, I do come across these questions a lot on
Hmm.
different podcasts, which is the
Yeah.
importance of college. And there would be certain point of view, and there are certain point of view which go like, you need it for the brand point of view on your resume. So I just want to understand from you, since you've done that. I've not had a
Yeah.
chance to study from such a big brand, so I can't really
Yeah.
say. But probably you can say that how much value do you get out of
Yeah.
it because it being a brand, and how much value did you
Yeah.
get out of it because you studied there or
Yeah.
did another MBA.
So I think one thing is that you've also done an MBA from the same institute where I did an MBA. That's now it's called NBS though. Then it was NIMS, right? So um, how would I say this? So, see, my answer in this case is very simple. So, for example, corporate finance in Pakistan is the same as corporate finance anywhere else in the world. You'll be still using the same concepts, the same formulas, or the same logics and everything. So, in terms of, and okay, so do you really need to do an MBA to learn corporate finance? I don't think so. You can probably do a Coursera course, which is in all probability free, right? But you need to understand what the value of the MBA is, and that is why whenever you're planning to do an MBA, my general thinking is that do it from a school which is highly reputable, because MBA at its core is basically a networking degree, right? So, will it teach you anything new about finance? No, maybe it does give, but what it does give you is a lot of different perspectives and a lot of exposure into how different people in the world are handling the same problems. And then what you need to realize is that these people are your biggest assets or takeaway from the MBA program for your future growth. So, in terms of hard skill, yes, maybe the one thing which I would say the biggest takeaway from an MBA program at that age is, and it's not very intuitive for a lot of people, but let's just say, normally the mode of instruction in such universities is case based, right? So there is a case, you study the case, you come to the class, there's an open discussion, different views. Finally, you crack the case, and everybody is happy, right? Uh, but I think so. Network, one thing I already mentioned, and the second biggest reason is that, all right, the most important case in your life is you yourself. How many times have you actually analyzed yourself, keeping in view all these frameworks around you, right? So I think that perhaps has been the biggest takeaway for me. The network, and the ability that, or let's just say the chance that I analyze my career as a case study and plan my future actions accordingly, right? So those are my biggest takeaways there. Not, I wouldn't say it was the hard learning part. Yeah, the hard learning part, probably a lot of it I already knew. And the one that I had sort of forgotten was pretty much the same when I got down to it, and specifically finance and accounting here.
Cool. Thank you. And I move into the return on the investment that you've done in this education. But before that, I just have a point to make, in which is kind of, I think, similar to what you're saying. I usually advise people that if they really have to spend a lot of money for an external education, and you can differ with it, by the way, what I'm saying, go for the big schools, the top schools.
Hmm.
Because, in my opinion, there is top one school, like the top tier school, and then all others. There is no such thing as tier two, tier three, tier four. They are all others. So, let's say spending $100,000 in a tier two, and I rather just not, depending on what the measure is or what relativity is. But let's say $100,000 is a lot for any education or any MBA. Spending on tier two, I would not do that. I rather just spend
Hmm.
$10,000, do it from NIMS or where we did it from. If it's only tier two, tier three, unless there is a different objective, you want to move abroad and something else. But if it's just about the brand itself, my usually advice is spend a lot of money, and it's okay to spend as much money you can afford, but it has to be top tier. And if it's not top tier, don't spend the same amount of money that you would have spent for top tier in tier two or tier three.
Yeah, mostly I would agree with this. I mean, because as I said, it's really about the network. Specifically, if it's a degree like MBA, okay. If it's a degree like engineering, even in engineering or stuff, if you go to MIT, or for example, ETZ here in Zurich. I mean, those are some really good schools, right?
Yeah,
I mean, and the weight that they carry is pretty awesome. The alumni that they have. So I think essentially, if you are spending in this particular area, you are spending to get access to this network. You are spending
right.
access to get
Yeah.
to get access to this environment. Otherwise, I'll completely agree with you. I mean, I'll do the courses on Coursera and maybe use Chat GPT for some explanations if I don't get it. Honestly, I mean, we probably don't need to spend that much. But yes, I will totally agree.
Cool. So now let's talk about the cost. So how much did it cost you? And if you can do rough math in terms of how much time did it take you to get a return on this investment that you did, because you didn't come
Y-
back, you worked in,
Yeah,
you stayed there and you worked there. So if you can speak to that. And this is
yeah.
my
I mean,
finance
now,
mind. This is my
yeah,
finance
this is
mind.
your
I
final.
yeah.
So I don't know. Oh God, you're putting me on the spot and you're now telling me to do all the calculations here,
A
right?
rough guess, like rough guess,
A
like
rough
six
guess.
months a
So
year.
help me out here, yeah. So help me out here, right? So a bit. So okay, let's begin with the cost. The cost at IM. So it's a 1 year MBA. Let's keep that in mind. It's so it starts in January, and before Christmas, before the Christmas holidays start in December, you get your degree, right? So that's about it. Now in this 1 year, what you end up spending is around, and this is I'm talking about the regular MBA. If you're doing like full time regular MBA, not the executive one. Executive is slightly more expensive. We can talk about that later. But if you're doing the 1 year MBA, you'll be spending, I think the tuition fee, if I remember correctly, was something like 80,000 Swiss francs. Uh, 80,000 Swiss francs, I think if we convert it into dollars right now, I think it may be similar or say about 82 or $83,000, something like that, right? And this does not include your boarding and lodging. So that's separate, right? Now, of course, that really depends on you, what your lifestyle is, what your family situation is. But I would say that my class fellows, I mean, we were here. I wrapped it up perhaps in, I would say, 120,000 Swiss francs, the whole thing, right? No, actually less than that. Sorry, it was about 105. 105 or 110, I think that would be the figure. That's where I wrapped it up. Um, so that's there. Now, there was a slide which our finance professor, his name is Nuno Fernandes. He was then in IMD. Now he's not there anymore. Portuguese, brilliant guy. He flashed a slide in one of our classes saying which MBA school has the best return on investment, right? And he did the 5 year thing, and everybody would be saying Harvard is this, and lo and behold, he proved that IMD is the best, right? I mean, clearly, clearly. I mean, there was no other MBA program that could have come there. But if I remember his figures correctly, I think the 5 year return ROI that he gave was around 34%, if I'm not wrong. Now, this may be completely very low to what you were expecting, or this may be very high to what you were expecting. I don't know. But essentially, I would say that if I have to do the if I'd come back to Pakistan, I think my payback would have been way extended, given also the currency situation right now. It would have been completely out. But I think if I you can get a payback for your MBA in about a year and a half to two, that
Okay.
should be a reasonable one. And then specifically if you stay in and around Europe, right? Uh, like the Western economy. So let's just say that. Or if you go to some countries in the Far East, Middle East, those are good. So that really depends on how you or in what base currency do you make your money after your MBA.
No, I think that's amazing. Getting your money's worth in a year, year and a half, given you've
Just the
significantly improved
payback.
your.
That's not the return. That's not the return. I would say you can not the return. Sorry, it's just the uh, what's the finance term? The break even, or
Yeah, 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 I
how
get
do
it.
you say
Yeah.
that? Yeah, exactly.
and especially on top, adding the fact that you've also significantly improved your quality of life by settling there, which is another part of this podcast, which I want to understand what are the possibilities
Yes.
with regards to that. So if I add that, I think this is an amazing return on the
Yeah,
investment.
so what I'm not taking into this equation is the payback that my kids got in as a return. Yes, of course, quality of life is something else. Is definitely something which is a big portion of. Specifically, in my case, it would have been a big portion of what you would consider as payback. But you know what my kids got in return? That is, I don't know if I can put a price on it. Really.
Agree. Okay, so let's move on. Which is, let's say I am in Pakistan, I am in the corporate sector
Sure,
in middle management,
sure.
and I want to move out. I want to improve my education. What was the process like, and how would you guide me to that process today?
Well, I think the process might be may not be very different. Of course, you may have some more options right now, but as I said, um, the important question in this case is first consider which stage of life are you at, right? That means both where you are at your career and what's your general age in life, depending. So, for example, if I was in my 20s or my mid 20s or even late 20s, I would probably not have considered a school like IMD or MIT Sloan. That's my view, right? I would be more, let's just say, um, uh, more open to considering schools which were where the general class average age was around my age, right? So that's generally the first thing. The second thing is, what do you want to do? Because there are, when you're doing an MBA, you're essentially analyzing three things from three basic circles, right? So one is you want to change your location, or you want to change your career, right? So I think it was the, you want to change your function, you want to change your location, or you want to change your industry, right? What do you want to do in this case, right? And generally the idea is, okay, if you can, so ideally if you can get 2 out of 3, you're already doing pretty well, right? 1 out of 3 is okay. So that purpose has to be very clear. So in that case, for example, let's just say if you go into schools like Harvard, or if you go into schools like uh, INSEAD, more than likely you will be going into consulting after that, right? Because you are in the right age range. Those schools are essentially the breeding ground for future consultants, and that's the kind. So, okay, if those are the kind of industries you are targeting, that's where you will go. If you choose a school like IMD or MIT Sloan, you will be going more in the industry. So you'll be going in, and when I say industry, the B2B industry, a lot of people might not even have considered that as a career before they went there. So you'll be going into the Danahers and the Borealises and the Honeywells, and all of these. Not saying that they will not go into these other ones, but majority of the people will go into the industry. So I think that differentiation is quite important. So for me, the process was simple. Yes, I didn't want to go into consulting. I wanted to stay more or less in the technology industry. For me, the biggest thing was, okay, I need to stay in the same industry, but I want to change my function and I want to change my location, right? So those were essentially my the things that I had in consideration. Then, of course, it was, it was the age primarily, which basically shortlisted the schools. Um, and then after that, it was essentially zeroing in by talking to the alumni of these schools, those that I had direct access to, and those that then I connected to through LinkedIn, to get their opinions about how the program is, how the post program life is. And then, of course, it was the application process, which was quite taxing in this case, and because it costs a bit as well, and it's a long one. So you need to write the essays, and you need to really present yourself in very good light. I hope I've answered your question somewhat, but the process was not the most, I would say, for me, unique in the world. It was probably a pretty standard way of choosing a program.
Any tests that you had to give, like GMAT, GRE?
Yes, so I had to do tests. You can either do GMAT or you could do GRE, right? I did GRE, right? why did I do normally once you go to these schools and you look at their websites, they will mention their average GRE scores at above 720 or whatever, right? Because I think that's already a pretty decent. You don't get to see the GRE scores mentioned there. You always get to see the GMAT scores. I did GRE because the guy that I went to train with in Pakistan was better at training for GRE. And I had literally, like, yes, I had heard of those tests, but I was not familiar with the environment, like, how you do it. And he said, listen, I can train you for GRE. If these guys accept GRE, why don't you just do GRE? And I said, fine, I'll just do GRE. So I had to do that. I had to prepare for it for about 2 to 3 months before so I applied. The process was that I applied. They shortlisted my application. They gave me the date for the assessment center, because while you're getting admitted into IMD, it's not like you get the offer while you're just sitting in Pakistan, no, or any other country. You have to fly into Switzerland for 1 day minimum for an assessment center. And that assessment center is essentially applicants like you, but they could be from anywhere in the world. So it's a pool of about 5 to 6 people generally that they fly. You have to come there. You have to spend one full day at IMD, and there are a number of exercises there. So there are interviews, there are role plays, there are case studies, there is a case study that they give you, then there is a case study that they give you over there. They give you a campus round, and then to make you feel better, they also give you some lunch, which is pretty nice. So yeah, I mean, in IMD, that's the process. I'm not sure what the process in MIT Sloan or for example, Harvard is, for that matter. But yes, there was a test, there was an assessment center, and after that, they gave me the offer.
So you applied online, I assume. Once you applied online, you
Yes.
didn't give your GRE by the time you
No.
applied. And then they
No.
told you come in for the assessment in Switzerland. And you by that time you had not
Yes.
given your GRE, you're just there for the assessment.
I think by that time I had given my GRE, but I had not got the result.
Okay.
Right?
But
So yeah, so I had given my GRE, but I had not got the result. So they said, listen, we can make you a conditional offer, and if your GRE score is above this particular range, only then we will give you a final offer. And like I said, because I wasn't very well prepared for these tests, I had to like took 3 to 4 months before just to prepare myself for these tests and then give the test. So time was running out. It was just that because I decided somewhere in March, April that I will apply. That's when I started preparing. I think May I applied to IMD. June they told me that you come for the August assessment center. No, it was in August or it was in September. I think it was in August or September of 2016. So I came for the assessment center. Meanwhile, I had given the GRE test. The result wasn't there. So once I gave the assessment center, once that happened, they gave me the offer about 5 to 6 days later, which was conditional on my GRE score, right? Fortunately, then the score was fine. So, and then the final offer was given.
got it. And any advice, like what if you're advising me, let's say, what are the things
Yeah.
that I need to be careful or watch out, or a hack or a tip for me to get my application approved? And I don't mean GRE. GRE is important, and I don't mean to for you to share any cracks or hacks for GRE, but more with regards to
Yeah.
the application or the assessment related to IMD.
The assessment, I think I can't really give you much hacks for because you see, assessment day, whatever you do on the assessment day, essentially is what you've been doing for the rest
Right.
for your life. And if you haven't been doing much in your life, then no hack is going to help you. This is my view, because there the situation, it's like open competition, right? And if you're not used to open competition and taking your space, getting your voice heard, or if you've not been solving problems in your life, I mean, if somebody gives you a case, you wouldn't know where to begin. That's okay.
Yeah.
What do I have to solve? How do I have to solve it? I wouldn't say that there is. Probably the biggest hack is that whatever you're doing right now, however you are spending your life right now, take it seriously, right? Take it seriously. Do it properly. I at least I didn't ask. Honestly, I didn't take any hacks. So, for example, I think okay. Let me just say this. So when I was uh, filling out my application form, right? And they're like, okay, tell us about your life and what you've done now. If you've just done 9 to 5, and if it's been a very regular life, it's very hard to kind of cook a story, right? And what you want to do.
Mm.
I had not done that. So I had been working, and alongside, I'd been doing a series of other businesses as well, alongside with my job, like you're doing this podcast. But I was running restaurants, right? So I had something to say there. Like, okay, listen, this is what I did. I started one restaurant. It did so well that, and this is actually what happened. One of the biggest real estate investors in Pakistan, no names because nobody's taking his name these days, but he actually called us to his office, and he actually told us, I want you to open another one in this sector, and I'm going to finance it 100%, plus I'm going to give you the space for free for 2 years. And this is when I was like 26 years old, 26 or 27 years old, right? And I'm sitting in front of that guy with my partner. I still remember that meeting. He's like, why don't you boys order something? He was calling us boys, "Muniya no kuch khilao khilao is taraf," So I'm not Punjabi, but he was speaking Punjabi. And we are just sitting there. We couldn't believe it, that what the hell are we doing in this hostel? He's like, this is what I want you to do. कितने पैसे लगने ने? Sir, we did the estimation. We'll need about 50 lakhs to open this place. And he's like, how much time? We said 4 months. And he's like, no, do it in two. And we said, fine, we'll do it in two. So we did it in two. In 2 months, we opened another branch of the restaurant. He gave us the space for free. And guess what? You know the band Noori? Noori was there on the inauguration. Like, I don't
Wow.
know how that happened. I don't know how that happened. It was almost surreal when I think
Wow.
about it right now. यार ये हमने क्या किया था? But then again, and then in the end, we sold it back to Beria Town, that restaurant, and we moved on with our careers and everything. So yes, if the point that I'm trying to make is that if you've not done much in your life, I mean, making the application successful, interesting, or even getting through the assessment day might be a challenge, right? So make sure that whatever you're doing right now, that's the only hack. Do it properly, do it good, and you should fare well.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Bilal. This is exactly the details I was looking for. So thanks a lot. Now, question is, how easy is it? Now you've done your MBA, and how easy is it for me? Let's say I've done my MBA from IMD, for me to settle in Europe, in Switzerland, with regards to work visas, PR,
Yeah.
citizenship. So if you can cover all of that with regards to settling life and all.
Listen, the biggest, so one thing about Europe is, and specifically this is, I'm now speaking to the Pakistani audience mostly, right? And I'm telling you because this was my view when I was, well, it wasn't my view then, but let's just say the view that I mostly grew up with was कि यार यूरोप में सब अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं. No, that's not the case, which I had learned, of course, because I had visited Europe before that as well, and I was already aware of the fact कि भाई सिर्फ अंग्रेजी इंग्लैंड में ही बोलते हैं, बाकी नहीं बोलते. ठीक है. So I think that was so I think the first thing that you need to realize is that yes, what are the barriers? Of course, maybe language is a barrier. The country that I'm living in, Switzerland, they speak three languages: French, German, and Italian. um, and if you don't know any of these languages, and I just know partial French, right? Then you kind of have an issue because there are a lot of jobs that you will not be able to apply to, right? So that's a challenge. Similarly, getting work visas is not the easiest job. Um, yes, if you do come to a school like IMD, recruiters do come, they look at your profile, and if they like you and interview you, they do have the power to uh, get a work visa approved, so to speak, right? For you. But then again, a lot of people are competing for these positions. Now, one thing which I think a lot of people do not consider and they should consider is working for smaller local companies, right? That's what a lot of people do not consider now, and there is a very good reason why you should do that. And I'm not saying smaller as in like do badeki company. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, smaller companies, say the size is 50 to 200 people with a with a revenue of say 10 or 15 million dollars, right? Now, this might not look very attractive, but then this is a very powerful local business which the local government is trying to support, right? And what a lot of people don't realize is that these people at times may have much more power in getting your work permits approved than the bigger ones, because they don't have access to talent like you, generally, right? So because they know that, yeah, these guys went to very expensive schools. I don't know if we'll be able to afford them or not, etc., etc. The bigger, and of course, the talent is also looking at the bigger companies. They want to go for the bigger companies. Nobody looks at them, but if you can have these companies in your target audience, and put in a good impression, and and a lot of these companies are actually looking to go outside of Switzerland or Europe, and they want to operate in the East, so you can be that key, right? And they will be willing to go that mile. So yeah, look for smaller companies, mid-sized, fast-growing companies. There you will probably have better chances of getting a permit approval. Language, eventually you will have to learn. Eventually you will have. It's better that you do, because if you want to stay in Europe for, and that's any country, for long, and if you want to integrate and finally get your passports, then at least the process in Switzerland at least is 10 to 12 years, right? So I mean, if that's the amount of time, or even in England, I don't think it's any less now. I think it takes about 8 to 10 years anyway. Similarly for Spain or Germany maybe. So the idea is, if that's the amount of time you want to spend in any country, uh, integrate. That's generally the best way, right?
Cool.
So yeah, that's what I would say there.
Thank you. And I think great advice with regards to being open to not just work for the big companies like the
Yeah,
multi-billion dollar companies, rather even maybe, and maybe if you can speak to that as well, because that's one curiosity I've always had. Your experience working with a startup
yeah,
compared to a big company, and I again, if what were the pros, what were the cons, if you can just speak to that as well.
yeah. I think so. For example, let's talk about the pros first. I mean, yeah, startup, it was a smaller company, but so for example, even while choosing a startup, I mean, don't just choose a startup for the sake of choosing a startup, right? Yeah, because I work for a startup. Don't do that. Unless you can really solve some problem for that startup, because startups have very obvious black and white problems, right? At one point in time that they are trying to solve. Of course, yes, given that they're working on newer ideas, cutting edge ideas, the excitement is there. Decisions get made faster. You're the one who's making decisions. There is not a team that you have to present to, right? It's over a coffee. You discuss and you go up and you implement that. I'm just going to talk about my startup. My startup, I mean, so we had developed this technology or algorithm which was very effective in analyzing telecom data. What were they missing? Data. So they had the algorithm, they didn't have the data, and the data that they needed was to come from telecoms. Hence me. I had an active network in telecoms, and I could get them that data, right? Which eventually, in a year, we did get. Now we are in about 12 countries, right? So, and then of course from one to two, and then we kept growing. So that's there. The exciting part is, of course, you can manage your time much better. It's very exciting. Uh, because you're really working on things which are completely new, which are like problems in bigger companies or telcos, for specifically speaking about us. And they would be like, how you're doing it, so you're actually guiding them कि किधर जाना है, where you need to go. So that's really nice. The downsides are also obvious. It's I would say, if you're directly working with the founders, there's a lot of emotional attachment there, which at times might not be the best for business. There are no systems, yes. So those frustrations do creep in. So I think the idea is that every startup has to kind of realize at what point what sort of people they need, and then take those decisions. But I think by far, I would say the biggest problem has been that, okay, if the founders are stuck on a particular idea, and you know that that might not work, it might not be the easiest to talk them out of it, right? So that can get a lot frustrating.
Got it. No, thank you. Thanks for that. I have just one second last question before I move to the
Sure.
last one. And I'm coming to the previous question. In your opinion, and I know you may not have the data, but what you've observed, what has been the success rate for people who come from non-European countries in to study and then get a job? Given you did talk about the challenges,
Yeah.
it may not be as easy. And the reason I ask is, for instance, like coming to US. When you come to US,
Hmm.
you are on H-1B, and it's a lottery system. It's a very broken system.
Hmm.
So, and probably you may not know a lot about it, but I'm just trying to tell the audience, or if you can tell
Hmm.
the audience, that what should they feel in terms of what is the level of success they can get in finding a job after studying in Switzerland, let's say.
Yeah. So, okay, if you're limiting it to Switzerland, I would say that it's. But let's just say if we talk about Western Europe and
Europe.
England, so and UK, let's just see, right? See, in IMD we were a class of 90, right? Out of the class of 90, we had about 11, if I'm not wrong, 11 Indians, two Pakistanis, me and another girl. Um, and there were about 13 or 14 Chinese. But okay, let's just say they were Asian, so to speak. Like, they were mostly the Asians, the people from China, Taiwan, and yeah, there was Japan. Yeah, they went back to their countries. Mostly they went back. Some maybe stayed here, but a large majority went back. Right. Of the Pakistanis, both are in Europe. It's me and another one. Of the Indians, which were about 11 or 12, only two remain in India. The rest are outside. Right. So I would say that if you go to a good school, yes, you might find it a little taxing to get interviews, and that job hunting phase uh, might be quite frustrating. But I've seen that mostly it's people who are either in Europe or UK, and some have actually moved to the US as well. Uh, Even the ones that went back to India, perhaps I think about four of them went back to India, but two of them were out of India. Not that they were dying to get out of India, as there is nothing of the sort. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that majority of the subcontinental people, so to speak, right? They are outside. Majority of them.
Got it. Got it.
Not so
Cool.
much in Switzerland, yes, but definitely in Europe.
Got it. Got it. Thank you, Bilal. So that's all I had, and this was an extremely informative session. I think I got more than what I intended when I was coming in. So thank you for that. Last question I have is, where can people reach out to you in case they have any question or any guidance they need with regards to studying in Europe and getting a job in Europe?
Yeah, I think probably LinkedIn is the best way. You have my profile. I don't know. Maybe on the video you can just
Yeah.
share that link there, and yeah, we can talk, connect, and I'll help you out in whatever way I can.
Cool. Thank you, Bilal. This was again amazing session, and thanks for taking out time.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure having you,
Cool.
being on this podcast.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.